What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask for Candy, where we talk about healing, self-care, love, sex, relationships, and what it takes to be amazing on the daily. Who I am is Candice Harper, lovecoach.com, honey. And my purpose with this podcast is to create healthy, romantic relationships all around the world through self-love, soul connections, and sweetness. But before we get to that, we are now partnered with Solivity Magazine and part of Solivity TV. And from now on, we'll be going live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Actually, if you're watching this show, we're not live, but that's okay. You can still comment, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to be watching this show with you on a watch party. So you'll comment, we'll talk back and forth. It'll be fabulous. This is, a little peek behind the curtain. It's a little pre-recorded, but that's all right, because we're still going to talk to each other. So don't forget also to subscribe to our audio broadcast, Ask for Candy, on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, wherever you normally download podcasts, so that I can fill up your car with the soothing sound of my voice while we talk about love. Also, you can email us at askforcandypodcast@gmail.com to leave comments, ask questions. If you're shy, I will answer those questions in later broadcasts. I will use some of those questions as topics for later shows. And with me, as always, is my Brian, my Deus Ex Machina. Hi, honey.
Hey, what's going on, girl?
You know how I do.
Oh, hey, I know. I know. Glad to be riding and dying with you.
Right. And I love it that you do. It's week to week happiness. I look forward to every week when we get together and have our great convos. And yeah, I'm just glad to have you.
I'm so interested in today's topic. Like mind blowing. See, y'all don't know.
Right, right. We're gonna build the suspense.
Dun dun
Dun, dun,
dun.
dun. So for those of you who've been listening, for almost 9 years, I have been a relationship coach, a workshop facilitator, and now a professional matchmaker with Talkify Dating Service. And if you've never heard of it, it's an amazing digital service where you can hire a matchmaker to do all of the sifting and the vetting on your behalf. And it's especially great for people who struggle with initiating contact or simply picking the right partner. Matchmaking and relationship coaching are my zone of genius. And the best part about it is that week to week, I get to grow and learn as I interact with people around the most intimate parts of their lives. I get to meet and nurture new clients. I get to screen possible dating candidates for them. And I get to design programs and activities that deepen their ability to get to know each other. Most importantly, I get to be part of what supports healthy beginnings and sustainably healthy relationships. I get to be the cause of self-love, soul connections, and sweetness. So I want you to stick around tonight. Like Brian said, we do have a very interesting topic. I won't say salacious, although it could be salacious, just to build it a little bit. It could be sexy, it could be salacious, it could also be controversial, because a lot of us, we kind of get stuck in our thinking. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but I want to make sure that you stick around because I have a really fantastic matchmaker moment. I'm not even going to tell you any teasers, right? I have a really fantastic new client, new singles all the time. And so, I'll be presenting that near the end so you can decide whether you might want to get matched up, if they might be the right person for you. But tonight's topic, are you considering getting back with your ex?
What?
So it's a pandemic, people, right? And if you're like me, we've never lived through one of these before, as far as I know, right? Unless, even the last one was the Spanish flu in the early 1900s. So I doubt.
Yeah, I think that was like the last one. I think we had the swine flu. That was no.
Right? The swine flu was on a much, much lower scale. And we've never been through a pandemic with all of this social media and interaction and ability to know what everybody's doing on some level, right? On this digital level. And I think that many of us find ourselves looking back on our past loves, our pre-pandemic lives, especially when we're in isolation. And I say this because not only has this been presented to me through clients and friends, but even myself in my own life. So I'm going to be referring a lot to my own thoughts through this isolation and my own thoughts about past lovers. Hopefully none of them will be listening because it's going to get interesting. So yeah, these days the coronavirus has added a whole new layer to why a lot of us are missing our exes during quarantine. So I did a little research online and I found this article by Susanna Weiss for Insider magazine, where she interviewed clinical psychologist Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, who said, it's only natural to be craving the company of people that we care about while we're quarantined, right? The concept of social distancing goes very much against our basic human needs to seek connection. That's what Dr. Zuckerman said. And she says, scrolling through your newsfeed posts of friends cuddled on the couch with their significant others or having lazy Sundays laying in bed together can serve as a continuous reminder that you are home, alone, and single, she added. Right? It sounds so sad when she puts it that way. The basic need for connection when connection is not as accessible is likely to bring up memories of others, including an ex. Memories, feelings, and even a desire to hear their voice can help foster a sense of connection during social isolation. So she's suggesting that even just the memory of an ex can help sort of soothe the feelings of social isolation, which I can see how that's true. Because I think, you can tell me, Brian, are you okay, honey?
Yeah, I had a little cough. Nobody heard that. Go ahead. I'm right here. I was choking up on those words that you.
Were you? But do you see how, do you think that I mean, I know that you have a significant other, so I doubt that you ever need to really go there, but
Nope,
I,
nope, not at all. Nope.
right. And if you could, you wouldn't be able to admit
Nope,
it.
nope, nope.
But it makes sense, right? Like someone who's in an isolation or in a moment of loneliness, that they would not only think about their ex, but they might even romanticize their ex a little bit. And it's like after people die, we tend to uh you know what I'm saying? We tend
Good
to
point.
elevate their
All
value.
all the best things come out, and oh
Yeah,
well, we did really well. You forget about all the heartache,
right. You forget
disconnects,
about all the hurt. It's like,
the
oh,
argument, that stuff.
yeah. Oh, that sex was so good. Or
Mm.
he was so
I'm
romantic that one. Or it was so romantic that one time. Or
Yeah, that one time, once out of like 10 years, right?
exactly. So she says an ex can be a particularly alluring person because they provide familiarity during uncertain times. And human beings often gravitate towards structure and familiarity, which makes sense, right?
Call
Especially
it the old familiar.
the old familiar, and especially in a time of uncertainty. She also says routine helps predict what comes next, giving us a sense of control over our environment. And this process is even more prevalent during times of heightened stress. So I think that what she's pointing to is all very valid. Like, I think as a global community, there is an overwhelming sense of heightened stress for a lot of people. And even those of us who are very much in a growth conversation and very present to our wellness and our self-care and all of that stuff, it's, that stuff is in overdrive for a lot of us, myself included, during this crazy pandemic time, right? So it's understandable that we would have moments where we start to think about and get nostalgic, think about the past, and romanticize what used to be. And I myself have frequently felt the way that Dr. Zuckerman describes during the course of this pandemic, which inspired me to ask myself some questions, because I believe that that is how we activate our self-awareness, is by being willing to ask questions of ourselves, to have an inner dialogue, to have even an outer dialogue with ourselves. Sometimes it's good to write things down, to ask questions of yourself that you then answer on paper, which I'm a big believer in practicing that. So I came up with a bunch of questions because my mind was swirling, especially the other day, but definitely in these past 6 months off and on. And you guys know I mentioned a lot the abusive relationship that I was in. Now, the interesting thing about that relationship is that it was very much, he used to always say that we were like twin flames, right? And whatever you feel like your definition is of a twin flame, people go on and on about soulmates, your perfect person, all of that stuff. I don't necessarily, as a matchmaker and a relationship coach, I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that there is one person that is your person, that is some magical grand love that is supposed to last forever and lifetimes and lifetimes. It's possible, but I don't necessarily think that that is a framework that has us in a healthy relationship or healthfully being able to navigate our relationships. But one thing about this relationship in particular is that he was the inspiration for my crystallization in a lot of ways. So when I met him and when we started, I was very much, into personal growth, but I was one of those people who could talk the talk and was not walking the walk. And so meeting him and coming up against someone who was of the same mindset that I was, and me being so unaware that I was talking the talk and not walking the walk, was like, I don't know, it was like two lightning bolts crashing into each other.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like, did you ever have any in the past, Brian, any relationships where you felt like that relationship was not meant to work out, but it did change you in a way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of think of all of my past relationships were, I won't say I won't say stepping stone, growth opportunity,
Yeah.
even though I didn't know it at the time,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so fall in love, have those, and then the real work, start finding out
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing about this particular relationship for me is that, because I agree with you, I think that all of the different, like I mentioned before, I'm a recovering serial monogamist, and all of my relationships, I believed that I learned something from them. But the difference with this one is that it just had such extremes to it. Like when it was low and when it was bad, it was bad. Like things were awful. Yeah, it was rough, it was physical, it was brutal. And then when it was good, it was like heaven. Like it was just amazing. Exactly. Sing it, honey. Exactly. Exactly. And so it's very easy for me, especially in this, during this pandemic and during moments of isolation, to go into this sort of fantastical fantasizing of those really sublime, delicious moments, because I could actually let those moments be the overriding theme for how I look at that relationship, and it would negate any of the other stuff, right? Now, here's the thing about the other stuff. It was all that negative, all those negative extremes that were the inspiration, like I said, for my own personal crystallization. Those were the things that had me have to get real about who I am and how I was treating myself and what my relationship was with myself and what I was settling for and what I was engaging in and who I really was. Like Wayne Dyer talks about, if you squeeze an orange, you get juice. And so when we're under pressure, when you squeeze a human, what comes out is what's inside. And so it was that squeezing of being in that relationship, and what was coming out wasn't so good. So what I learned from that relationship is that I hadn't taken care of the inside. So that's what was amazing about it. Now, I say all of that to say what? Because, like Dr. Zuckerman said, we gravitate towards structure and familiarity. And, after the relationship, I now feel like, okay, I can recognize it for what it was, but that doesn't have me not, it doesn't still lead my mind, keep my mind from being led into thinking about those good times and missing it and thinking, oh, it would be great to have those sublime, wonderful moments now in these times of isolation. But we have to balance out those thoughts with the fact that our exes are our exes for a reason. Right. So, in a moment of feeling like I need the gratification of, helping me with this isolation, soothing, nurturing, loving myself through this isolation, I need some sort of gratification. I also have to be willing to balance out, like, what is the reality and what is going to be the long-term outcome of dealing with this person, should I choose to deal with them. So, as I always believe in the power of self-awareness, like I said, I came up with the following questions to ask oneself. Are we ready to deep dive into the questions, Brian?
Absolutely. Go for it, King.
Right. Also, the other thing that we want to know, we want to be able to ask ourselves too, is like, is it the pandemic, or is it that I do have valid feelings and that I do really need to reconnect with this person on some level? And as much as I talk about how abusive this relationship is, there are moments where I'm like, do I need to reconnect with this person? I know that sounds crazy, because that goes into like, codependency and all of that stuff. And, it's like when Rihanna went back to Chris Brown and people were mad. It's but let's be real about it. Like when we are in that kind of entanglement, when we are in that kind of I don't know, I can't even think of a word that's strong enough to describe like that kind of bond that changes us in that way. You can't help but have those moments of thinking, have I grown enough that now this would work? All of that stuff comes to mind. So let's ask ourselves some questions. So in the moments of isolation in this pandemic, I have a moment of, I really miss the good times. I really miss those sublime moments of deliciousness. I got to be willing to just ask myself, is it purely for the sex? And, right? And that question of, is it purely for the sex? Sorry for the background noise. Is it purely for the sex opens up a whole lot of stuff, because if the answer is yes, it's purely for the sex, that doesn't mean don't bother with your ex. But then the next question might be, if it's purely for the sex, am I at a place in my life right now where I could have it just be about the sex? So let's assume this person is available to me now, and all I want to do is have a sexual encounter with them. only you know, because it's really important to be able to listen to your own intuition, your own inner knowing. Would I be able to have just a sexual encounter with this person, satisfy whatever this need is that I'm feeling, and then go on about my business? Not get back into some kind of big, deep, crazy, complicated thing, if that's not what I want to do. So you want to be able to answer that question for yourself. Is it purely for the sex? Can you isolate those feelings? And can you communicate? Would you be able to communicate that truth to this ex, whatever ex you're thinking of? Right? I can tell you for mine, I definitely would say there's moments where it's purely about the sex, but whether I could communicate that to him, I mean, I could say it, I probably could say it, but I would have a lot of fears around what that would open up. So I remind myself of that. So if I would have a lot of fears around what that would open up, is it something that I should really be entertaining? Right? Because if the fears are still there, there's something about that there's something in my gut, there's something that's saying this is not necessarily something that I should be pursuing, right? So there's that, number one. Number two, have the reasons that you broke up with this person dissipated? Right? Because think about it, Brian. Think about any time you've ever broken up with somebody. Right? And granted, like in early dating, I talked about in previous shows, people do ghost and walk away from each other for some stupid stuff.
Right.
So if you ghosted somebody or blew somebody off over some dumb stuff, you can reconsider that. But when you think about you've had a relationship with someone and, some sort of force of incompatibility has shown up and has said, we can't be together anymore, or it has had you decide that you can't be together anymore. Like, are you sure that whatever that reason was is no longer in existence? Like, I know for sure that part of the issue with my ex was that he had an addiction problem. And I haven't talked to him probably in a few months, but he was just as much in the addiction, and we've been broken up for a few years. He was just as much in the addiction as he was when we broke up a few years ago, right? So that reason that we broke up has not dissipated. If I were to get myself re-entangled based on needing the instant gratification of company or not wanting to be isolated, I would have to contend with the fact that one of the reasons, I should say, that we had a hard time reaching deep level emotional intimacy is still in play.
Yeah.
And it ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, that's an important point. Practice, talk about. Breakup, and reason for the breakup doesn't.
Yeah.
You may have the fire and you have that fiery night, and then the next day you look at each other, it all comes back again. Either that day or the next day or a week later, that unresolved thing comes back.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And here's the thing too, a lot of times those unresolved things are something that like I know that when I was in this relationship, I had a lot of issues around enoughness. Like, am I enough? And that feeling of self-acceptance and self-love and all of that. So it was easy with him to be very triggered by a lot of his behaviors. But I also know that there are certain things that I can make, like I can look at now and I can understand them and I can be in a space of acceptance around them. Like, I can accept, let's say, that he's a substance abuser. But one thing I know that's unworkable is that how that prevented us from being able to be deeply emotional with each other. So it's not that you can't look at those things and, maybe you've evolved to where something that used to bother you doesn't bother you anymore. But you also want to be really aware of, what was this, how was this thing standing in the way? Like, why did it break us up? And, if I still see it as a problem, like I would see that as a problem in anybody that I was starting to date with, if they were a regular substance abuser. And I know that one sounds obvious, but it's not necessarily all that obvious, because there's, he was functional. There's a lot of functional substance abusers out there who aren't connecting on any emotional level because the substance, right?
Very true.
Is standing in the way. And so if that hasn't gone away, if that hasn't changed, you want to know that if I'm re-involving myself with that person, that I'm still taking on the same thing that I took on before, right? especially if I'm re-involving myself with that person for more than just a sexual encounter, like we were talking about earlier. All right, then number 3, question to ask ourselves when we're in a moment of loneliness and isolation: what do I truly need right now? So is it companionship? Is it friendship? Is it physical contact? Is it reassurance? Is it community? Is it to be seen or heard? Or is it to hear or see? Is it to be able to listen to someone else or connect with someone else on that level? Which leads right to number 4, which is, did being with my ex ever bring those things?
Right?
Right? We got to be willing to be really real with ourselves when it comes to that. So, and also how often and what was the price that you had to pay to get those things? So when it comes to companionship and friendship, first of all, companionship, friendship, I will say on some level, being with my ex did bring those things, because, it's just that thing when you're part of a couple, like certain things get done, doors get opened, you go to places together, there's that togetherness, you have somebody to kiki, with about the people who were wherever you were, like all of that stuff. There's a level of like friendship, companionship in that you get to talk about certain things. But if I'm honest with myself, it wasn't a friendship or a companionship that was really fulfilling. It was, well, you're the one next to me, so I might as well talk to you about it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so like, we want to be really honest about, that's what it was in that relationship. Obviously, I've had relationships and friendships with other people where it really was that kind of connection. And I'd have to be able to be honest with myself. Am I missing my ex because I want companionship and friendship? And was my ex really ever able to give me that? Right? Were they ever really able to give me reassurance? Were they ever really able to give me a sense of community? Did I feel seen and heard with this person? Because if that's what I'm really wanting, for me to be identifying someone who's never been able to give that to me, I just got to be aware of that, right? Because maybe there's some other source.
Were those foundational?
As far as was I present to it then?
Yeah.
I would say, like I said, I was doing a lot of talking and not walking. So I might have identified some of those things, but I wasn't aligning myself with those things.
Wow.
Yeah, like I can look back now and I can say, yes, like having friendship, companionship, being able to really see each other, hear each other, a sense of community and belonging with the person. I can look at that and say, I not only is that part of the foundation of a relationship that I would want to be in, but I also can walk that walk. Where there was a time when I thought I was, but I couldn't, I wasn't really. And we could do a whole show about that too, because it's that kind of like and actually last week's show we will be talking about like, walking that walk and, what it means to be authentic with those things.
You guys missed it. Go watch it.
Right?
Great.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, you want to be flat with yourself. You want to be real with yourself. Did my ex actually ever provide those things? And then number 5, you want to ask yourself, especially in the moments of like real longing, when you're like, you're in it, where you're like, really, you forgot all the stuff that didn't work. And you're really thinking about like how great it might be if we could just have one of those moments again and just fulfill this loneliness. You want to ask yourself, what is my long game? Like, am I only thinking about this moment right now, this feeling that I'm having? Or would I truly want to be back in a relationship, a real relationship with this person? Yeah. And those answers are going to be what leads your steps. I'm a big believer in our thoughts and beliefs and how they affect our actions, but just the willingness to ask myself these things. I don't like to pass down rules because I think everybody's situation is different. And, one thing I coach very intentionally and with a lot of commitment is how to listen to yourself because I don't have answers for exactly what you should do as far as, when your romantic questions come up. You have those answers. But I think the thing that we struggle with is listening to ourselves. So if I'm willing to ask myself, like, what is my long game, and be real with myself. If you can't tell yourself the truth, you can't tell anybody the truth, right?
Great.
Right. So if I'm real with myself and I say, you know what, in the long run, I don't see myself with this person. It didn't work out before. I don't see it happening now. So I don't want to approach this in that kind of way. And maybe I shouldn't approach it at all. But in the long run, it might be great. Maybe we could possibly get back together. You want to just be really real with yourself about where you're coming from, because that is what's going to lead and guide your steps as far as whether you should reach out to them, whether you should, try to reopen the book. But we will talk more. There's going to be more questions that are going to have to do with whether, what if they're not available, things like that, after we take a little commercial break. You ready to take a little break, Brian?
Yeah, why don't we take a little bit of break?
All right, my love, let's do it. We'll be back with the rest of I think I did 11 altogether, 11 questions, but I always come up with more. You know how I do. Anyway. Because I just love to do it. All right, so we'll be back in a little bit. Come back with us.
Watch Beauty and Gratitude with your host D'Angelo Thompson every Friday at 8 p.m. right here on Solivity TV.
Yay, we're back. We're back, and we're talking about, I think I came up with 11 questions plus, right? 11 plus questions to ask yourself. Are you enjoying it, Brian? Because
I'm really enjoying this.
Are you good?
Yeah, this is like this is one of those subjects that talk about like, that's like that forbidden fruit, your ex talking about,
right,
about your ex.
Yeah,
well, I'm enjoying it.
I think too, because on the one hand, we try to therapize ourselves and say, okay, when a relationship breaks down, that's in the past, I'm moving on.
Right.
It's a brand new me,
That dude.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, forget him, forget her, whatever. And, there's nothing wrong with, sort of healthfully framing the mind to say, I want to look toward the future. I don't want to look back. And a lot of times we have a lot of good, valid reasons not to look back. But I think, like we said, in this pandemic and in this sort of global situation that we've never been in before, I think people are experiencing their vulnerability in ways that we never expected, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those of us who have felt vulnerable about our exes and thought about them and wanted to be with them and felt like they couldn't admit it because maybe they weren't being strong, that's for those of us in that situation as well. But I think this pandemic adds another layer to that. So it makes even people who normally wouldn't admit it be able to say, well, I am kind of missing what I used to have. We're all in a state of missing what we used to have around a lot of things, I think. And as much as right? Do you feel like that too?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sensory overload when it comes to just, being at home, doing stuff that, you normally wouldn't be doing, instead of there's less distractions,
Yeah, totally. A lot of us when it comes to work has either gone away or it has shifted in a big way. So we really are now laser focused on what our existence is and what life is like day to day. So yeah, it's a different world. It's a different world, honey. All right, so
It's a different world.
right?
We got the songs going on now.
Right? I was waiting for that. I knew you were going to come with a little musical interlude. So number 6, question to ask myself when I'm in a moment of feeling isolated and lonely from my ex. Am I genuinely concerned about them and their welfare, or am I only looking to feed my own needs?
Wow, you really going there today.
Hello. I had to go there because these are the questions I ask myself. Right? And if I'm asking them to myself, then you can be asking yourself as well. It's like, if I can't be flat and honest with myself, then I can't be flat and honest with anybody. So am I genuinely concerned about them and their welfare, or am I only looking to feed my own needs? And if I'm honest about this, I keep using this last relationship because he's the most recent and the one that I think of as far as long-term relationships. So, am I genuinely concerned about his welfare? Well, yeah, I want him to be okay. But when I'm in a moment of like loneliness and like, oh, I'd want to get with him or whatever, it has nothing to do with how he's feeling right now. If I'm honest. If I'm honest, it's about how I'm feeling right now. And, would it be self-serving of me to reach out to this person? Let's say it's just a sexual encounter that I want, or let's say I do want to entertain the thought of going forward in a relationship. It's not something that I know for sure, but would that be fair of me to do that if I'm only thinking about what they would bring to me? If I'm only thinking about, how it's going to satisfy my need? And it actually would not be fair to do that to a person, because as we talked about last week, as far as healthy coupling, the idea here is that we're going into it so that we can overflow and give to somebody, that we're coming from a place of, I have so much, I have enough to share, rather than I'm getting with you because I need. Yeah.
Wow.
We got to sit with that for a minute.
I know, right? Like, woo.
Yeah. And the reason that, another reason that our relationship was as tumultuous as it was is because we both came into it. What are you going to do for me? What do you have for me? What are you bringing into this relationship for me? And that is the exact attitude that started the snowball of being in an abusive relationship. So
I'm remembering that the last bed scene in Boomerang between Eddie Murphy and Robin Givens' characters. It was all about, oh, I just need this, Yeah. And it was all personal gratification.
It was all personal gratification. And remember when Halle Berry, she was like, if love would have brought you home last night.
There it is.
When he's like, I love you. And she's like, love would have brought you home last night. And she's absolutely
really
right.
Yep.
The perfect response to that.
Exactly.
Right? There's just no sustainability in looking for our own gratification in a relationship. And I know that is counterintuitive to what everybody thinks, which is why the divorce rate is so high. But if you go into a relationship with what it can do for you, you at some point will be sorely disappointed. If not right away, 15 years down the line, after kids have been had and all of that stuff, if your mindset, your framework around the relationship is, what does he do for me? What does she do for me? What is she giving me? And that is what you focus on, you will lose at love.
That's another song. What you gonna do for me?
What you gonna do for me?
We need to have some music on here.
Right? We need to have we need to do a love karaoke segment. All right, number 7. Have I grown past, forgiven, or gotten over any resentments that I had? So before I think about reaching out to this ex, have I gotten over it? Have I forgiven?
Yeah.
Right? Am I still sitting in resentment? Is there still a little part of me that wants to,
Good point.
Yeah, I got to be real with myself about that. Do I still got a little bit of resentment left over? Am I going to trigger negative feelings in myself just by dealing with this person because I'm still holding on to it? Are we going to end up fighting rather than just having a nice conversation because I'm still mad?
Yeah, I wanna make up to break up again.
Right? And sometimes we do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in a moment of loneliness. Like if I'm lonely and I just, go ahead and haul off and get in touch with this person, but I still am mad about the fact that they cheated on me, or I'm mad about the fact that they did whatever they did. Am I going to then trigger that and end up just fighting with this person all over again? And is that what I really want? Am I just looking for attention? I got to be real with myself. I got to be willing to ask myself this stuff.
And I think all of us have done some of that to a certain degree, right? Where we'll post pictures of ourselves looking good on social media, maybe even take a date or ask somebody on a date just to try to remind them of what they got or what they had, I should say.
The revenge body. Yeah, you got to be real with yourself because, ultimately this stuff is unworkable when it comes to healthy relationships. And even, in the midst of a pandemic, we want to be fostering connection and health in all of our relationships. So, that willingness, my mentor always says, expose yourself to expand yourself. And you got to be willing to at least expose yourself to yourself and be honest and be real. And, a lot of times we build up justification, and justification is just another word for the lies we tell ourselves. Like we can justify a lot of behaviors by making up the lie for why we do it. But when we're really real with ourselves, there gets to be some workability. We get to have a little bit, more of a intimate, connected experience with people. Because when we're real with ourselves, we can be real with others. Number 8, are they actually available, or would I be disrupting their current situation? You got to be willing to ask yourself that, right? Because it's not just them. It's not just you in that case. So if I'm isolated and lonely and I decide to reach out to that person, what's going on with them? Are they now married? Are they in a relationship with somebody? Are they, if I know that about them and here I am reaching out with my loneliness, I'm not just affecting them, I'm affecting whoever they're dealing with as well. And, this is not a right or wrong judgment call, but I have to be really present to what is workable in my life. Is it workable to be disrupting someone's relationship? Is that okay? Is it okay to be disrupting someone's relationship, even if it's an ex? Does that feel right? Does that feel good in my gut? Does that feel good in my soul? Is my inner knowing supporting me disrupting someone's relationship? Got to ask yourself that. Number 9, would I be able to accept or be with them if nothing about them has changed?
Ooh.
Right? If nothing about them has changed, and however long it's been since you were with that person, would you be able to be good with that? Right? You have to be willing to ask yourself that question.
You better think.
What do you think, Brian? What were you going to say?
I said, you better think about what you're trying to do to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one, girl.
Yeah.
You got me on that one.
If I couldn't accept them before, I mean, sometimes nothing's changed and now I'm the one who's changed, so I can't accept them. So it's not that it's an automatic no to that question, but I do want to be able to ask myself that question because it's gonna alert me to whether I really want to be involved or if this is just about the loneliness and the pandemic. Because if this person is the same person they were before, then no, I don't. I don't want to deal with them.
Right.
And I know my loneliness for them is just about the pandemic. It's not about anything real, right? Let's see, number 10, why haven't I already reached out to them? What has been stopping me?
Ooh, that's another good one.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the questions I ask myself if it comes up. Like, okay, so now you're thinking about, reaching out to him, checking in with him, whatever. Why haven't you already done it? And if I'm honest with myself, I got a million reasons why.
See, number 9.
See, number 9. Exactly. And I got to be willing to heed that. I got to be willing to listen to my gut that's saying, you made a choice, and you made that choice for your own self-preservation, and you made that choice for your own growth. And, you can make a new choice, but is it going to be worth it? Right. So you just want to be present about it. It's like, is it my perception of them or my perception of myself? Like, what is it that's having me not go ahead and call them? Either way, it's something that needs to be healed before I get re-involved with them.
Now, Candy, I have a question.
Tell me.
I think this is a good question too.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you is that this is from the perspective of you're the one who has ended the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're taking the role in that. You're the one who kind of said, hey, this is the end. What if it's the reverse and you weren't, I hate to use these terms, but I'm going to use it anyway. You weren't the dumper, but you were the dumpee. What do you say about specifically number 9 and number 10? How do those change? Because I think even though that happens with us still, right? We're still part of it. We're still part of the relationship ending, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about that?
I love that you brought that up, because I think that you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because I definitely am coming at this from a place of being the dumper. But if I'm honest, our dumping was somewhat of a mutual dumping.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? And in the time since we broke up, he definitely made some attempts to have some level of reconnection. So that's the position that I'm coming from with the questions that I ask myself. However, I'm a big believer that no matter who did the dumping, as far as the possibility for reconciliation, that is wide open. And the reason that I believe that, right? And the reason that I believe that is that it has everything to do with how we grow, how we change, and believing that we are all a field of possibility, right? So if someone dumps me, there is still that obviously, if they've decided they never want to be with me again and they've closed off, but there's still something within me that can say, I can go back to this person, and if I'm willing to assess where I was at or what I'm feeling, or if I'm still feeling like strong love for this person, or that I really want to be with this person, that I can actually affect some level of change in how they feel about me by sharing myself with them and then being open to how they respond to it. So a lot of this is assuming that that person will still want you, but also without that assumption, you can be sharing of yourself and be just as willing to reach out to that person, as long as you're not attached to whether or not they'll respond to it. Do you know what I mean? Because even if you're a dumper, there's no guarantee that they're going to be like, I still want you.
Right? That's a good, yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that question, because I think that's a good point. There's no guarantees that someone's going to still want you either way. But our willingness to say, okay, if I do want this thing and I am going to reach out after I've asked myself all of these questions, if the answer is yes, my gut is telling me I need to be with this person again, or at least need to reach out and communicate with them and try and see what it is. Either way, I have to know that I can't be attached to them still wanting me, or attached to an outcome that it's going to be what I want it to be. Yeah.
I also asked that question so we could build up suspense for the number 11.
Yes. And number 11, simple enough. Would I even be entertaining any of these thoughts if we were not in a pandemic? Would it even be on the horizon? Would it even be a consideration? So if I can ask myself that question and the answer is no, then I know that when these feelings come up, I just feel them and let them pass.
Nice.
Right? But if the answer is yes, I still would be, then I get to, consider, okay, so let me get clear about what is it that I would like, that I do want. What do I need to communicate with this person?
Wow.
That you want to be real, right?
These were awesome.
Did you enjoy them?
Yeah.
I'm so glad,
Yeah,
B.
these were like awesome.
Yay.
Seriously.
Good. I'm
I mean,
glad.
it's, all about self-growth.
Totally. And just the willingness to be flat with ourselves. It's a hard thing to do sometimes. And, I wanted to share all of these because these are literally things that I entertain in my mind. Like if it comes up in a moment of isolation, a moment of feeling like, oh, it would be easy to entice my ex back again. When I start having, I could be right or wrong about that, but when I start having those thoughts, that's the way to go, I start asking myself these questions, and they get me back on track with my gut and my intuition. They get me back on track with my self-care, my enoughness, my self-love, my self-acceptance. And even it soothes any feelings of loneliness because I get clear again. Like I start to realize, okay, you're fantasizing, you're making up stories, let's be
You
real.
you complete me.
Yes. Which is the most damaging scene in any movie,
Oh my gosh.
right? For anybody's love life.
But
But
everybody, like, oh, this is so romantic.
yeah,
You had me at hello.
it's like, stop it with that. Complete yourself,
That's a whole nother show.
right? It's a whole nother show. Completing yourself and then partnering up with somebody else. It's a whole nother thing. So the takeaway is this: there is no right or wrong moral answer to whether or not getting back with your ex is a good idea. It's all about clarity of intention. Clarity of intention. If I know that what my motives are, and if I know what my motives are and can share them honestly with my ex and not be attached to how they will respond, then the field of possibility is wide open. If I'm just looking for instant gratification and the fear of not being alone, trying to fill that need, trying to take care of that fear, I will end up with the kind of outcome that aligns with short-sightedness. And I deserve better. Don't I deserve better?
You deserve way better. We all
Thank
deserve better.
We all deserve better. So, we always want to be able to say to ourselves, I deserve better than the outcome that comes from instant gratification, the short-sighted instant gratification, because there's no sustainability in it. It's not worth it. And usually ends in heartbreak, STDs, all kinds of stuff that we don't want. Right?
Especially now. You don't want to be going to the hospital.
Hello. I mean, now it's beyond STDs. You could be going with that Rona, like my nephew says. You could be getting that Rona messing around with somebody, and then it ends up not even being worth it because you were just trying to get instant gratification. So, and this is not a cautionary tale. It's always be willing to get into your self-awareness, be your observer, ask yourself questions, and answer those questions flatly and honestly. So now it's time for our matchmaker moment, Brian.
You sure you want to do that matchmaker moment?
Yeah. Why? You think I should not do it?
Nah, all right. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Moment.
All right, tonight's client profile, a lovely young teacher. She's super smart. I really love her. She's in her early 30s, 31, and she's super smart and socially conscious. She loves horseback riding and has an eclectic and fun family life. She comes from a very interesting family, which if you get to be her date, you'll get to find out all about. And she also makes her own sourdough from scratch and knows how to make sourdough waffles.
Hey, what?
I know, right? Have you ever had a sourdough waffle?
Woo, hot damn.
I've never had sourdough waffles. I feel like they'd be delicious.
Shoot, I think they would be delicious.
Right? Sounds good. So if you think that you might like a sourdough waffle, get in touch with me. askforcandypodcast@gmail.com if you think that you might be a good match for my client, and let me know. Say, I want to be matched. Ask for Candy, and I will make sure to facilitate that and get you screened and see if you might be a good date for my client. And then also the Epic Circle is changing. We just finished collective number 1. We're about to start collective number 2, September 21st. We're going to start a membership model, which I will tell you more about next week because I'll have more details on it. But we'll be causing personal transformation when it comes to communication, forgiveness, self-love, mother-daughter relationships, purpose, friendships, all the tools we need to be as big as we were meant to be. And, like I said, we just ended the first 24-week program, and we're starting a new one on September 21st. So I would love to have you join. You can reach out to me, Candice, at Candice Harper Love Coach. Now, our Instagrams are at Ask for Candy Podcast, at Candy Love Coach, at Solivity Magazine. And thank you so much, my Brian, my broadcasting partner. I keep saying my new.
You are sure welcome.
Oh,
these hours go by too quick.
They go so fast, right? And I keep saying my new broadcasting partner, but now we're into like what, 7 or 8 weeks?
This is episode, I think, 11 now.
Oh my goodness gracious! This is a full-on partnership.
Dun, 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 dun.
Right? So don't forget to check out Solivity Magazine, Passion, Purpose, Living. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Solivity Magazine on YouTube. And subscribe to Ask for Candy on Anchor. And that's it. Until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more and then ask for candy. Bye, everyone. Bye, Brian. I love you.
Love you too. Watch Ask for Candy with Candice Harper every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Solivity Magazine brings you the best in inspiration on Solivity TV. Check out our new shows. Mark your calendars for Solivity Magazine shows by going to solivity.com now.